in the cold, trembling hours before dawn, as Moscow's skyline glimmered beneath a layer of mist, the city's air defenses suddenly came alive with panic. The sirens screamed through the sleeping capital, echoing between the domes of cathedrals and the mirrored glass towers of its modern skyline. On that night, Ukraine launched what analysts would later call one of the most ambitious drone offensives in the history of modern warfare. 371 drones, precision-guided and coordinated, slicing through Russian airspace toward the heart of Moscow. The strike wasn't just a show of strength, it was a message, loud and undeniable, that the war had entered a new and unpredictable phase. The drones, launched from multiple locations across Ukrainian territory and even from the contested skies near Belgorod and Kursk, formed a massive digital swarm, guided by real-time satellite navigation. They weren't the typical small reconnaissance drones that had once buzzed over trenches. These were hybrid combat drones, some packed with explosives, others equipped with jamming devices, and a few designed for cyber interference. For months, Ukrainian engineers had worked in secret hangars, repurposing commercial and military drone technology to create this synchronized attack force. As the drones crossed the border, Russian radar systems struggled to track them all. Many of the drones flew low, weaving through terrain and valleys, while others climbed high to confuse the defense grids. At first, Moscow's early warning systems mistook the incoming swarm for a radar glitch. But as the first few explosions lit up the outskirts of the city fuel depots, radar installations, and communication towers erupting in flame panic, gripped the Russian military command. The night sky turned into a storm of anti-aircraft tracers. The Russian Ministry of Defense scrambled S-400 missile batteries, while the city's police and emergency units rushed to seal off critical zones. Over the Kremlin, the faint hum of drones grew louder, almost ghostly, as if a swarm of angry insects had descended on the heart of Russia. Residents captured the chaos on their phones, bright flashes streaking across the horizon, air defense systems roaring like thunder, and drones diving through the defenses like fireflies in a storm. Within minutes, social media exploded with videos of fiery debris raining over Moscow's suburbs. For many Russians, this was the moment they realized the war was no longer something distant and abstract. It had arrived at their doorstep. Meanwhile, in Kyiv, Ukrainian military officials monitored the live feed from command centers deep underground. The operation had been meticulously planned, its timing chosen to exploit a rare gap in Russian radar coverage due to maintenance downtime. The mission's goal wasn't just destruction, it was disruption. Ukraine wanted to hit not just military assets but the very infrastructure that powered Russia's command systems, communication networks, data centers, and logistics hubs. Within the first 30 minutes, over a dozen power substations feeding Moscow's defense grid were knocked offline. The city plunged into partial darkness, with flickering lights painting an eerie glow across Red Square. In a secured room beneath the presidential administration building in Kyiv, President Volodymyr Zelensky was briefed by his generals. The operation, named Viklik the Challenge, had been months in the making. Each drone carried a unique code that allowed it to operate independently in case communications were jammed. Zelensky, watching the live feed of Moscow's skyline on a satellite monitor, reportedly said only one line: "Let them feel what we have felt for 2 years." The strike sent shockwaves across the world. Western intelligence agencies had been informed only hours before the launch, and while some governments expressed concern about escalation, others quietly admired the precision and audacity of the attack. Ukraine's message was clear: the days of limited battlefields were over. Russia could no longer hide behind its distance or its nuclear arsenal. Back in Moscow, chaos deepened. As the drones overwhelmed the air defenses, the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations declared a state of emergency. Airports shut down, flights were diverted, and hundreds of thousands of residents were ordered to take shelter. Yet despite the overwhelming noise of explosions and gunfire, Russia's most symbolic sites, the Kremlin, the Defense Ministry, and the presidential residence, remained unscathed. Many believed it was intentional. Ukraine wanted to avoid civilian casualties and focus on crippling Russia's military infrastructure. Still, fragments from intercepted drones crashed near Red Square, shattering windows and sending crowds fleeing in panic. Russia's response came swiftly and brutally. Within hours, the Kremlin held an emergency meeting chaired by President Vladimir Putin. Furious at what he called an act of terrorism on our soil, he vowed retaliation beyond anything Ukraine has ever seen. Within the next 12 hours, Russian missiles began pounding Ukrainian cities Kyiv, Kharkov, Dnipro, and Odessa, The scale of Russia's counterstrike was massive, targeting power plants, ammunition depots, and residential areas alike. The skies over Ukraine glowed red as missiles streaked across, intercepted by Patriot systems and Ukrainian anti-air batteries. But Ukraine had anticipated this. Many of its key defense installations had been relocated underground or camouflaged in civilian areas to minimize losses. Still, the price was steep. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians were left without electricity as Russia's retaliatory barrage struck energy grids across the country. Yet, in Kyiv, morale surged. The drone strike on Moscow had proven something critical: that Ukraine could reach deep into the Russian heartland. For a nation long under siege, that realization brought a wave of defiant pride. Internationally, reactions poured in. The United States and NATO called for restraint, while European leaders urged de-escalation. But within think tanks and military circles, analysts marveled at Ukraine's technological leap. This wasn't just warfare, it was 21st century hybrid combat, a fusion of AI cyber warfare and asymmetric tactics. The drones used in the Moscow operation were reportedly guided by an AI algorithm capable of adapting flight patterns mid-mission, based on live enemy response. Experts speculated that Ukraine might have developed this technology with private tech firms and defense partners in the West. As the hours turned into days, footage from Moscow's streets revealed the extent of the damage: burnt-out cars, shattered glass, smoke rising from industrial zones. Russian officials downplayed the destruction, claiming most drones were intercepted. But satellite imagery told a different story. Multiple impact points near communication towers and logistical hubs indicated a deep penetration of Moscow's defense ring. For the first time in decades, Russia had been forced to admit vulnerability at home. Inside Russia, whispers of fear spread quickly. State media tried to portray calm, but Telegram channels flooded with videos and eyewitness accounts. Panic buying began in some districts, and rumors circulated of a second wave of Ukrainian drones. For ordinary Russians, the illusion of security under Putin's rule was cracking. Many wondered how their military, which claimed to control vast airspace, had failed so catastrophically in Ukraine. The attack became a symbol of resilience. Murals appeared overnight in Kyiv and Lviv depicting drones soaring toward the Kremlin with the Ukrainian trident emblazoned on their wings. For the Ukrainian people, this wasn't merely vengeance, it was justice. They had endured blackouts, bombings, and invasions, and now, at last, they had shown that the war's balance could shift. As the dust settled, a global debate erupted. Some argued that Ukraine's strike risked provoking an uncontrollable escalation, while others saw it as a strategic masterstroke that forced Russia to reconsider its aggression. Military analysts predicted that drone warfare would now dominate the next phase of the conflict. Unlike missiles, drones were cheaper, smarter, and harder to stop. With each passing day, Ukraine's engineers refined their designs, pushing the boundaries of what small nations could achieve against superpowers. A week later, President Zelensky appeared before cameras.com and firm, saying, "We do not seek war on their land, we seek peace on ours. But peace will never come while the aggressor feels untouchable." His words resonated across Europe, sparking renewed discussions about deeper support for Ukraine. Behind the scenes, NATO intelligence confirmed that Russia had moved several strategic bombers further east, fearing more Ukrainian strikes on Moscow and St. Petersburg. The drone attack changed not just the battlefield, it changed perception. It demonstrated that warfare had evolved beyond tanks and trenches into the realm of technology and courage. For the first time since World War II, Moscow had been attacked directly, and not by another superpower, but by a smaller nation fighting for its survival. The world watched in stunned fascination as a modern David had taken aim at Goliath and hit him where it hurt the most. In the days that followed, Russia's response grew quieter. The massive retaliatory missile strikes tapered off, and officials began talking about strategic recalibration. Analysts interpreted it as an acknowledgement of how costly escalation could become if Ukraine continued to strike back with such precision. Behind closed doors, intelligence leaks suggested that Moscow had opened back-channel communications through intermediaries in Turkey and China, signaling a desire to re-evaluate the pace of the conflict. For now, the skies over Moscow remained tense, patrolled constantly by new defense, drones and radar systems scanning for threats. But for millions around the world, the image of hundreds of Ukrainian drones streaking through the night toward the Russian capital will remain unforgettable, a moment when the balance of fear shifted, when a nation under siege showed that defiance and innovation could pierce even the mightiest fortress. And as dawn broke over Kyiv days later, with the sound of church bells echoing across the city, one thing became clear: this was not just a battle of weapons, it was a battle of wills. Ukraine had dared to strike the heart of its enemy, and in doing so, it had changed the face of modern warfare forever.